Hello, welcome. It's Yvonne here from Women's Fitness Adventures. Welcome to our session this afternoon. We are talking about the downhill. The downhill is something that it gets a groan each time, and the downhill is significantly harder than the uphill. So over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about our feet. We've been talking about flat fit, and I've got another term for you tonight. We've been talking about, those uphills. We've been talking about how to go faster without actually increasing or doing anything to your fitness. So tonight we're going to talk about why hiking downhill is actually harder than hiking uphill. So if you are watching live, please go ahead and let me know that you're here. I haven't seen anyone yet. And if you are just going to close off a few things, if you're watching on replay, welcome. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask away. Or if you have any comments or real lived experience, please go ahead and share that as well. So, I get so many questions across my desk, and everyone trains for the uphill. We think that the thing that we have to, focus on is building our cardio, and we do. And the thing that we have to, work on getting comfortable being out of breath, that we really have to keep pushing and training the uphill. And we do have to do that. But what we also need to do is start to prepare our bodies for the down, prepare our knees for the down, sometimes even our mindset for the down. So that's what I'm going to talk about on today's session is what do we think about the downhill? How do we train for the downhill? How do we make ourselves stronger, not only physically, but mentally more confident for the downhill as well? So go ahead and say hi. I think I've got the chat all sorted out, but again, let's see. So I'll just say hello, and hopefully you are here with me. So when we go downhill, it really tests everything. Okay, awesome timing then, Kerry. A discussion we had yesterday with friends when we were hiking. Awesome. When we go downhill, it's testing not only our physical, but our trust in ourselves as well. And I know for many of our members who I've had the pleasure of doing some hikes with, is that when we get to an unfamiliar downhill, that's when things can start to change. So that's what I want to talk about tonight is how do we train for downhill and downhill that we don't know. And also what happens to our bodies when we go downhill. Why do we sometimes feel sore the next day when we do more downhill than we do uphill? Or, why do we feel sore days and days after? What's physically going on with our body? What's physically going on in my mind as well? So for our members, there's a lot more detail, as you know, when we do our trail fit training, when we do our step fit training, when we do our masterclasses on all of this and how to train for that and how to get the body stronger. But today I'm going to give an overview. So why does going down hurt more than going up? Going up, we get out of breath, we get sweaty, we get that heart rate that feels like it's going to pop out of our, come right out of our mouth. But going downhill, we can sometimes get knee niggles, or we can sometimes get, really sore in our quads, those big muscles at the front of our legs. And many women, many people think that the pain of going downhill, that descent pain is actually a fitness problem, and it's not. It's a load problem, so how much weight we have on our back, and it's a muscle problem as well, how strong those muscles are or aren't. Now, hello, Ellen. If you're watching and you've had some knee reconstruction and, some major, knee issues, then some of this will be totally relevant to you and you'll probably know and understand. And if you have never had anything go wrong with your knee and you still get knee pain going downhill, then this is really the discussion that you need to listen into. So tune in those ears. So the simplest way to understand it, when we walk uphill, our muscles are working like an engine. They're contracting and shortening, and they're driving us uphill. And we're probably pumping our arms as well, or using our poles to take some of that pressure off our legs to go uphill. It's hard work, the heart rate gets elevated, but our body knows how to do that. And there's less risk involved because the chances of us falling over or slipping out when we're going uphill are much lower than what they are when we're going downhill. But when we walk downhill, our muscles are doing something absolutely, completely different. They're acting as like a brake. going downhill. So we put the brakes on and we are contracting, we're shortening that muscle, but we're also stretching it at the same time or lengthening it at the same time. And we're fighting against gravity. And depending how steep your hill is, it can be really steep or it can be not steep, but it's such a relative thing. We're fighting gravity to stop ourselves from tumbling or slipping out or falling over as we're going down that hill. And so that braking action that we put through our legs is much harder on our muscles than what it is when we're going uphill. So think about that. It's why you can feel, out of breath and puffed on the climb on the way up, or the hike on the way up, but on the way down, you actually feel a little bit more wrecked. You've had to concentrate a whole lot more. You've had to focus. You've really had to hone in on your technique, because there's also the mental aspect of, am I going to fall? Am I going to slip out, that we're dealing with at the same time. So it's also why when we've gone and done a lot of downhills or downhills that aren't familiar, that may be a bit steeper than what they normally are, our legs feel really sore afterwards. They might feel fatigued the afternoon we finish, but the next day and the day after that, they might feel really sore. That's that delayed onset muscle soreness. So we've used the muscles in a way that's kind of stretched them, and in layman's terms here, stretch them and lengthen them and strengthen them. But then, they've been told they've had a workout and they're sore the next day. So that's delayed onset muscle soreness. And it happens more often when we go downhill than what we do when we go uphill. So our body knows how to go uphill, but it takes specific training and thought to figure out how to go downhill. So hello, Chris. Hello, Lynn. Hello, Christine, still in Queensland. And hello, Marie. Nice to have you here. So when we go downhill, the load, and think about it, for most of us who are hikers, whether we are starting out or whether we're experienced hikers, we have some sort of load on our back. We have a backpack, and we might, if we're beginning, or just doing some general training, have, really lightweight, some water and maybe a snack. And if we're on an extended hike, we might have, 7 or 8 kilos in our bag. So when we come downhill, that load on our back is actually triggering more stuff in it. So if you think about the age profile of me and most of you who listen here, is, we're in that midlife somewhere, not going to put an age on it. I'll come back to that, Rebecca. Not going to put a number on it, but, things happen to our body as we get older. And I know we're all so sick of hearing that, but we have less natural cushioning around some of our joints as we get older. So research also shows that for every extra kilo that we put on our back or are carrying, so say we're carrying 8 kilos on our back or 5 kilos, whatever number you want to assign for it, we're actually loading more than that through our knees again. So if I'm carrying a 5 kilo pack, I'm putting another 5 kilos of load or more through my knees as I go downhill. So you think about that, not when we're going uphill, but when we're going downhill, why our legs can possibly hurt so much the next day is we're actually getting not only the intensity of bracing going downhill, but the load from our back is also coming down through those knee joints also. So if you think about that, there's a lot of things going on, coupled with the fact that, we may have some knee pain because the muscles that support the joints aren't strong enough, or we haven't activated our glute muscles, all those things that help us going downhill. But it's not too complicated that we can't get stronger in all of those muscle groups and find ways to become descent fit. There's another term for you, because I'm going to talk about that in a minute, just by changing a few things up in our training. And they're not dramatic. They're just small little tweaks that we can make to our training over time. So what I see on the trail with women mainly, because that's in my space, but I see it with people in general, and I've seen it all over the world, is that those who have knee pain are generally finding ways to get down a hill to minimize the knee pain, without knowing what technique they can use to get down the hill to minimize knee pain that will keep them in a much safer space. So what I see is, some side steps. I see, the hips are facing one way, the knees are facing another, and the feet are facing another way, which becomes a really big trip hazard or fall hazard, because you can just roll over yourself. Or they might be just favoring one leg and coming down on that side, which then can upset the apple cart in terms of what muscles are being engaged, or split, how that splits us unevenly in terms of our weight distribution from our pack and everything as well. But it's a natural instinct. But if we keep playing to that instinct, it can become, just a higher incidence of potentially slipping or falling out. And there's much simpler ways to get downhill when you know how they are. So why I say to people, unless say you're on Tongariro with us, where we did do sidestep, but there was a very intentional process coming down a set of, a scree volcano, is that if you come down in the sidestep on a descent, you want to make sure that your body is going all of your body is going in the direction of travel. And so if I'm coming down the hill like this, instead of going down the hill like this, my risk of, and did you like that? My risk of falling is simply much higher. But if no one's ever shared with you how to find solutions to this, then you keep doing the same thing. So we're going to share some of those solutions. So hello, Rebecca. You had delayed onset muscle soreness after the Thursday clamshells. Yeah, and they may show up again this week because those clamshells are super important for some of the moves we're going to share tonight. And hello again, Sue. Lovely to have you here. And hello, Gillian. Must be nearly time for you to head off. So Christine says, sadly, the physiotherapist has told me that the damage to my ligaments is partly due to my age, amongst other things. And don't we hate that? Tell us the good things we're doing for our age. And not much I can do about that. No, we can't. But I am doing exercises to try to strengthen the muscles to protect the ligaments. Absolutely. So that's all we can ask of ourselves is let's do things that strengthen our joints, strengthen the muscles that support our joints. Let's work with what we have because we can still get stronger with what we have. So a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about cardio fitness and I spoke about being flat fit. And the flat fit set, and say that fast, the flat fit set the cats amongst the pigeons. And I had lots of you writing in and ringing and talking to me and questioning your own skill and stuff like that. So park flat fit there because it has got a lot of you thinking about how you do your training. So here is another one. Familiarity fit. Familiarity fit. So what I see all the time when we're out, and as most of you know, I do Monday morning hiking, and I use that, yes, as training, and yes, the women who live nearby me get to access that, but it also serves as research and a training ground for everything I share with you and everything as certainly our members get the benefit of. And what I see is that women are really, really comfortable on the descents that they know. So we train in roughly the same location every Monday. There's lots and lots of different locations on that mountain. But we know those trails inside and out. So each Monday I'm trying to find different aspects of training that we can do so that we're not getting familiar fit, and familiar fit with the downhill in particular. So when we come to a downhill and we know how it rolls, we know where the gravelly bits are, we know where the steep pinches are, we know that if we need to, pull the poles out or do whatever we need to do to get downhill. But I guarantee you when I take the same women on a trail where the hill is not familiar, and I know there's a couple of hills over there, I could literally do that tomorrow and the hill is not familiar, then this is what would happen. There would be a hesitation at the top. There would be a clench my teeth at the top. There would be perhaps the pulling out of the poles at the top if they weren't already out. The clenching my fists super tightly onto those poles at the top of the hill. There would be the crouching over on the top of a hill because I'm scared, and if I make myself lower and smaller to the trail, then I have less chance of slipping out. So this familiarity fit of the descent rather than descent fit is something that we all need to think about. So we've got a couple of terminologies now. So the familiar, if you train on the same descent all the time, then you get that familiar familiarity fit. What we want to do is start to mix it up with our downhills. And whether you are starting out or coming back, or whether you've been training for a while, always try and find the trail that challenges you, and that includes the downhill, because the ones that challenge you are where the training really starts to come into effect for you. So um, when we get to a trail that we know and a downhill that we know, we really we don't have anything to reference it by. It's not so steep because I've done this before, and I managed before, and I can manage again, and I can talk, and I can really not pay too much attention. So we want to, in our training, not all of it, but just find some trails that we aren't familiar with on the downhill. The holding the breath, the tensing, which actually makes it worse. It really does make it much, much worse, because when we have a tensed body, we're on high alert, and we're more likely to have an accident when we do that. So, holding those tools, like those poles like anchors where the grip is so tight, is not good for you either. Chances are you probably stop breathing at this point as well. And they don't have to be super steep trails to feel this way, as in downhill. They can just be trails that aren't familiar to you. And I know that over the course of the years, the fear for all of us is real, of slipping out and hurting ourselves on the downhill, because it's not so much that we fall over and we might graze our arm, or, feel a little bit embarrassed, because let's face it, we do feel embarrassed when we slip over. But it's the feeling of, if I slip out and I hurt myself, what are the consequences for my life in the coming days and coming weeks if I really hurt myself? So that's why we become fearful of the descent, and generally why we stay within our same training zones when it comes to the descent. So, there's a couple of things we can do when we go downhill, and I know I'm going to share some of the comments in here in a moment. But descents get a lot harder in the afternoon as well, when we've used energy in the morning, and we're on more tired muscles or more fatigued muscles than what we had when we started off. So if you've ever been on a multi-day with any of us as leaders, Women's Fitness Adventures leaders, you'll know that we're probably on more heightened awareness in the afternoon when we're coming to downhill than what we are in the morning. We're always aware, but just making sure, pointing out a few more things in afternoons than we are in the morning. Once we look at a hill and I haven't done this downhill before, and we breathe, and that someone's got your back, and the downhill could be the same steepness as the hill you did the other day, but it could just be a little bit rockier, which changes it again. Once we start to breathe, we start to relax, we let a lot more oxygen into our system, and things don't become as tense. We can kind of feel a bit more fluid on the trail, and a bit more used to how our body should feel, rather than being so tense. But how do we go downhill? And hello Morna, hello Lynn. Ellen says, I have to make sure I don't lean forward when I go downhill, and make sure that I have lengthened my poles. Yeah. So a couple of great things there. And hello Catherine, and hello Barbara. Is we have a couple of cues, a couple of things we share inside Women's Fitness Adventures. And I always say, walk like you have a wet nappy, because what we're doing is our feet are a little bit wider than usual. We're relaxing into our knees. We're kind of leaning back on our bottom, or towards our bottom, feeling like we have a wet nappy on, which is, it sounds ridiculous, but it really gives you that immediate visual of what to do when we're heading downhill. So this is how it works. Our wider stance lowers our center of gravity. So our feet are a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. We're really pushing into the ground, and and our boots, I just happen to have some. Mind you, I do need a new pair, and I can't find them. But our boots have a grip on them for a reason, okay? And that grip is to push into the earth, the tread, so that we are actually, really connecting ourselves with the earth. So when we're standing a little bit wider apart with our feet, we're really pushing into the earth. We've got some great stability happening there. If we've got that feeling of the wet nappy on as well, we kind of know that's how wide apart our feet really should be. And then what we do is we just lean slightly into our bottom. Knees are soft, not super soft, but we're leaning back into our bottom. And why are we doing that? Because what we want is to take some of that pressure off the knees. Now, those who hike with us, and we teach on our multi-days as well, we teach you how to do this, and we teach this inside our master classes and our trail fit. All our sessions are designed around building the strength in these muscles. So we want the glutes, we want our bottom to be doing the work. And if it's doing the work, it's going to take a lot of pressure off the knees as well. So we call it the duck walk, or the new one I found when we were in New Zealand this year is the John Wayne, kind of walking like John Wayne, and you're going to be at a shoot up. So shoot up's probably not the word to use. But that's kind of the technique that we would suggest, no matter whether that is a trail that's really steep, or a trail that is just new to you on the downhill and you haven't done it before. And I see over time the feet get narrower and narrower together, and I'm always yelling out, put your feet wider apart, especially if going downhill is something that you want to get more confident with. Is just exaggerate the move at first, and then eventually it will become like second nature and you won't even know that you're doing it. So as I said, it just repositions our whole body in one go, and it relaxes us. It's not making us feel as tense as we were when we, may have been gritting our teeth, holding onto those poles and really crouching over and not breathing. The other technique that we would suggest in that is, poles will give you some great stability going downhill, and poles generally go out in front on the downhill as opposed to beside the hip on the uphill. And, you can lengthen your poles going downhill, but new poles these days have, longer grip on the handles, so you can just move your hand higher or lower up that pole to go up or down the hill. Now that depends, of course, on the poles that you have. But we also do suggest that you don't become, your pole is not your absolute crutch to get down a hill, because if the pole were to slip out, if the pole were to snap and things have happened, or you weren't able to use your pole, are you still confident in your body that you could get yourself downhill? So there's a whole lot of techniques, and our members, of course, learn all of this inside the membership. This is a really good point, Morna. Thank you. Morna says, I tend to make distance, your safe traveling distance, little acronym there, safe traveling, ST, to make the distance from whoever is in front of me in case I fall on them. If I feel like I might fall, just that thought can be self-sabotaging. Oh, the mind games. Absolutely. And many years ago, I broke this wrist mountain biking. I rode my bike off an edge of a bridge, which was a silly thing to do. But I said to myself, don't look at the edge, don't look at the edge. But what did I do? I looked at the edge. So if we've got that mantra going through our head, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, chances are, that's the loop that we're playing over. So it'd be stay strong, feet wide apart, all those little cues that we can do to train ourselves to become descent fit, not familiar fit. So it's also, more important in the afternoon as the body has been tiring to start to engage some of those techniques as well. So for those of you, and you said it before, Rebecca, who come to our trail fit and step fit sessions, these are the muscles that we train. This is the type of things that we do, our step up, our step down, all of those things. We're training ourselves to be trail fit, to be descent fit, to be non-flat fit as well. So the unfamiliar descent. So I've said, okay, if we're familiar, if we're always training on the same downhills, how do we deal with it when we come to a new downhill, to a new descent? So if I'm always doing the same thing, my nervous system, my mind only has the same reference point. Now, granted, we all can't get to new locations all the time. But we can mix it up how we do things as well. So you can always be, as we do in Step Fit, on the step and lowering ourselves down to the ground, really controlling that load of how quickly or slowly our foot goes onto the ground, which is giving us confidence, building those muscles in the front of our legs so that they're not super sore for when we get to a big descent. But if we train on a new trail, it will show us something different about ourselves. It'll tell us a little bit about our mindset for downhill. It'll tell us about our leg soreness, definitely the next day. So what muscles we used, what we didn't, how we engaged them. And it will tell us the gap in where our training is to where we want our training to be for whatever adventure we might be, anticipating coming up. So we want to try going downhill over different gradients. You don't have to find the steepest hill in your park. You don't have to find the steepest hill in your street. And if you are doing some street walking, don't do it in your hiking boots, of course, but you know, just try the variation, see how it feels on your quads, those big muscles at the front when you're on a super steep hill. And I know many towns have some super steep hills that you can practice on. Try going, downhill on a different surface, over tree roots or over rocks or over unmarked trails as well. Just make sure you have your first aid kit with you. When our mind and our nervous system has a variety of trails that we're training on, it gets it familiar with the unfamiliar, and that when we come to it in a situation that's new, i.e. a multi-day or a new hike that we're going on, it's not total foreign freeze. I don't know what to do. There's some reference point that our body can draw on. So the hill that the uphill, we've been talking about uphill for a while, and the downhill we don't know. The downhill is the one that is the gap in our training. So it will test us. So go out and intentionally seek hills up and down that you haven't trained on before. And that can be suburban. Make sure that you have if it's suburban, you don't wear your boots, just wear your sand shoes. Make sure that you've got enough space at the front of your feet, which is why, the front of your shoe, which is why shoe fit is so important. Hiking boots are so important. Test out that at the beginning and end of the day when feet are, a little bit more warm and might have swelled a little bit from being on your feet all day. Test out different socks, test out different sweatiness. Just go test yourself differently, because the familiar fit is fantastic. We have that baseline of cardio, strength, and endurance. But what we want to do is here today get descent fit. So try some different descents. If you only have the one hill near you, and I know some of you live, remotely, and it could be flat, or you only have the one hill, try and find different ways to come down that hill, or try and move a little bit faster coming down the hill, or try and go slower going down the hill, or try adding weight coming on your back coming down the hill, and just start having those recordings, because the more we vary it up, the more unfamiliar we get, the more comfortable we'll get in environments that we're not used to. So, as I said, our members, all of you have that library of resources, and the library and the live sessions of the training that we do each week as well. So in summary, everyone prepares for the uphill, always doing some cardio, but no one really prepares for the downhill. I know when we get downhill in our training, that no one knows. It's very much, could you hold my pack? Could you come beside me? And I'm saying the same instruction again and again and again. So it's getting comfortable with that little uncomfortable so that we can get comfortable again. But the good news is that, I've given you the tips and shared my knowledge here. And everything is buildable. Everything is achievable. It's really just a matter of putting ourselves out there and letting the trail tell us where the gap is. What do we need to learn? What can I learn from this? And Catherine says, I train occasionally without using poles, and that changes everything, because you're learning to trust your body as well. So that is a great thing. You don't have to be without poles all the time, but to not be dependent on poles is a really good thing also. So our goal is to not freeze at the top of an unfamiliar hill. It's to to not have to get on our bottom at the top of an unfamiliar hill, because not that the hill's super steep, that we're just scared we might hurt ourselves. So the goal is to build up our strength, build up our technique, and build up through our training and the variation in our training of different locations, that descent fit that we can add into our tool bag. So fitness will get us up the hill, the cardio. Revisit that one on YouTube or inside our membership. And the strength and the technique and the training will get us safely down the hill, and hopefully not too sore for the days to come afterwards. So a hill doesn't really care how well or how fast or how quickly you got to the top of it. All our friends and family care how well we got down the hill and back to the car and back to safety. So for those of you who attend our sessions weekly, for Step Fit and Trail Fit, you're there. You've got the strength in your body. You've got the strength in your legs. And then it's really just mindset on the trail and finding those trails that will test you and will challenge you and give you that feedback as to what's important. So don't start if you're familiar fit and you go, I need to get descent fit. Don't start with the hardest thing around. Just start with something a little bit different to what you normally do, and you'll start to see the change and the feedback coming straight away. So that's it from me for this week. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any comments, if you've been watching the replay, please let me know. I'd love to hear your stories. And thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next